The vision. The year is 2047. The Earth hangs in the night sky like a blue jewel, impossibly distant. Across the void, a barren world, cold, hostile, and silent, has become the stage for the most audacious experiment in human history. This is Astra 1. A cluster of domes and metal spires, shimmering faintly beneath the pale light of a sun, 50 million miles farther away than we've ever lived. Here, humanity has taken its first permanent step beyond Earth. For centuries, we imagined this moment ink drawings in dusty science fiction magazines, flickering frames in black and white films, bold paintings of astronauts against crimson horizons. Now, it is real. The colony is not a triumph of technology alone, it is the culmination of countless human stories. Generations of scientists, engineers, and dreamers worked through decades of failure and doubt. Political rivalries were set aside. Resources were pooled. The dream became a plan, and the plan became a mission. Mars, the red planet, has never welcomed life. Its thin atmosphere, laced with carbon dioxide, offers no breath. Its soil is toxic, its temperatures merciless. Yet here, beneath transparent domes, wheat grows under artificial sunlight. Here, human voices echo in pressurized corridors. Here, the impossible has become ordinary. But this is not a story of triumph alone. It is a story of survival of fragile life clinging to an alien world. Every breath of air, every drop of water, every calorie of food has been fought for. The colony is a delicate balance, and one failure can unravel it all. Still, the settlers endure. They wake each morning to a new sun rising over a red horizon, knowing they will never see an Earth sunrise again. They live not as visitors, but as pioneers writing the first chapter of humanity's future among the stars. This is the story of Astra 1. Before Mars, the road here. Before the first boot touched Martian soil, there were decades of preparation. The dream of reaching Mars was not new. Its roots trace back to the early 20th century, when rockets were more theory than machine. Visionaries like Wernher von Braun, Carl Sagan, and Robert Zubrin spoke of Mars as the next great frontier. The 21st century brought urgency. Climate change, dwindling resources, and the fragility of civilization forced humanity to look outward. The moon became a testing ground, its bases proving that humans could live, work, and thrive beyond Earth. Space agencies and private companies formed uneasy alliances. NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, CNSA, ISRO, and emerging space nations pooled their efforts. The private sector brought rapid innovation. Reusable rockets slashed launch costs, autonomous construction robots could operate without humans, and life support systems were perfected for years-long reliability. The first step was cargo. For a decade, uncrewed missions delivered habitat modules, power systems, and supplies to Mars. Solar arrays were unfurled, nuclear reactors buried beneath regolith for safety. Drones scouted landing zones, mapping safe corridors and cataloging every rock and ridge. Only when the infrastructure was ready did the human mission begin. 24 settlers, scientists, engineers, medics, and farmers were chosen from tens of thousands of applicants. Their training was relentless. They learned to repair oxygen systems in pitch darkness, to grow crops in Martian soil simulants, to work in EVA suits for hours without rest. They studied medicine, geology, and psychology. Most importantly, they learned to work as a single unit because on Mars, teamwork is survival. This was not a one-way trip by necessity, it was a one-way trip by choice. Every settler knew they would live and die on Mars. The launch was watched by billions. As the engines roared to life, the world held its breath. Humanity's oldest dream was no longer fiction. It was leaving the pad. The journey. The voyage to Mars was unlike any journey in human history. For the crew of Astra Mission 1, the journey began not with liftoff, but with separation from their families, their friends, and their home world. The ship was a marvel of engineering, a rotating habitat ring to simulate gravity, radiation shielding made from water tanks, and autonomous systems to handle navigation and life support. Yet, it was still a small island in the endless sea of space. For 7 months, they traveled. Outside their windows, Earth shrank to a pale star, and Mars grew from a pinprick to a rust-colored world. The void between was vast and silent. Communication with Earth came with a delay, small at first, stretching longer each week. Eventually, conversations became messages, and messages became brief updates. Life aboard the ship settled into a rhythm. Days were divided into work shifts, exercise, research, and communal meals. There were moments of levity, birthday celebrations, small musical performances, but also moments of deep isolation. Space was not just a physical challenge. It was an emotional one. Every crew member had trained for the technical demands of the mission, but no simulation could fully prepare them for the psychological strain. Some found comfort in routine, others in staring out at the cosmos, letting the stars remind them of the enormity of their journey. As they approached Mars, the ship's sensors began relaying high-definition images of their landing site. The red plain stretched endlessly, dotted with the glint of pre-deployed habitat modules waiting for their arrival. In those final days before descent, anticipation mixed with anxiety. There would be no second chances. The landing had to be perfect. And so, in the silence of deep space, the crew made their final preparations, checking, rechecking, and memorizing every detail. When Mars filled their viewports, they knew this was no longer a dream. This was home. Touchdown. The descent to the Martian surface was the most dangerous phase of the mission. Mars's thin atmosphere offered little help in slowing the massive landing craft. Parachutes deployed, retro rockets fired, and the surface rushed closer. Every sensor reading was checked in real time. Every fluctuation triggered a flurry of commands. The landing gear met the ground with a muted thud, dust billowing into the thin air. Silence filled the cabin. Then, the voice of Mission Commander Elena Park broke through. "We are on Mars." Outside, the landscape was alien yet hauntingly familiar from decades of robotic exploration. Ochre plains stretched to the horizon, punctuated by low ridges and scattered boulders. Above, a pale sun hung in a butterscotch sky. The first steps were deliberate and ceremonial. Each crew member emerged in turn, their boots pressing the first human footprints into Martian dust. A small flag was planted not of a single nation, but bearing the emblem of a united Earth. The crew's first task was survival. They unloaded cargo, oxygen generators, habitat modules, and supplies. Robotic rovers hauled materials to connect the pre-landed structures into a single operational base. Inside, airlocks hissed and life support systems roared to life. The moment the habitat was sealed and pressurized, the crew removed their helmets for the first time in 7 months. The air was warm and dry, tasting faintly of metal. It was artificial, but it was life. In the days that followed, the colony came alive. Solar arrays unfolded, greenhouses were activated, and communications relays linked them back to Earth. Each sunrise brought a little more security, but also the constant reminder: on Mars, everything you need to survive must be made or brought. The landing was history. The real work was just beginning. Life in the colony. Life in Astra 1 was unlike life anywhere on Earth. Every day was a balance of maintenance, science, and survival. Mornings began with system checks, oxygen levels, power output, water reserves. Any anomaly was addressed immediately. Small problems could grow into deadly crises. Afterward came exercise, essential to counteract the toll of low gravity. Food was grown in vast hydroponic greenhouses lit by LED arrays tuned to mimic Earth's sunlight. Rows of lettuce, tomatoes, beans, and wheat flourished in nutrient-rich solutions. Some crops were purely practical. Others, like strawberries, were grown to lift morale. Protein came from insect farms and lab-cultured meat. Meals were shared in a communal galley, where conversation was as important as calories. Work shifts were diverse. Geologists ventured out to study Martian rock formations, searching for clues about the planet's past. Engineers repaired equipment or upgraded systems. Scientists monitored experiments ranging from plant growth in low gravity to microbial survival in Martian soil. Communication with Earth was a lifeline, but not a constant one. Messages took anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes each way. This delay forced autonomy. The settlers could not rely on Earth for immediate help. Decisions had to be made locally, with confidence. In the evenings, the colony quieted. Some settlers read or wrote journals. Others recorded video logs for family back home. Small social events, movie nights, music sessions, even improvised sports in low gravity helped maintain mental health. The settlers lived under constant awareness that they were entirely dependent on technology. Every wall, every seal, every circuit was the only thing separating them from a vacuum. This fragility was sobering, but it also bound the crew together in a shared purpose. Over time, routines turned the extraordinary into the ordinary. The view outside an alien world untouched by life became as familiar as any earthly landscape. But beneath the surface of that routine was the unspoken truth. The colony was still an experiment, and Mars would not forgive mistakes. The struggle. On Mars, survival is not a guarantee, it's a negotiation with a planet that has no interest in keeping you alive. The first crisis came 6 months after arrival. A micrometeorite, no larger than a pebble, pierced the outer wall of a storage module. Alarms echoed through the habitat, and every settler knew the sound by heart: loss of pressure. The crew moved with trained precision, sealing bulkheads, isolating the breach. No one panicked, but no one forgot how close they had come to disaster. Radiation was a constant threat. Mars's thin atmosphere and lack of a magnetic field meant that every solar flare could be deadly. The colony's shielding layers of regolith piled over living quarters was enough for normal conditions, but during severe storms, all personnel retreated to an underground safe room. These lockdowns could last days, with settlers packed together, passing time with stories, games, and music. Psychological strain was harder to measure. Some settlers thrived on the challenge, others struggled in the isolation. The absence of fresh air, the lack of open horizons, the knowledge that the nearest hospital was 225 million kilometers away, it weighed on the mind. Supplies were finite. When a water recycling unit failed unexpectedly, rationing began immediately. Showers became sponge baths, and every drop of condensation was collected. Repairs took 2 weeks, and by the time the system was restored, the colony had learned a harsh truth. On Mars, redundancy is survival. Even agriculture posed challenges. A fungal outbreak spread through one of the greenhouses, threatening a significant portion of the food supply. The infected crops were destroyed, and the greenhouse was sterilized. Recovery took months. Every challenge reminded the settlers of the stakes. Failure meant not just the loss of equipment, but the loss of lives. Yet each time, they overcame. And with each victory, small or large, the colony grew a little more confident, a little more prepared. The turning point. The moment that defined Astra One's permanence came in its second year. A cargo mission from Earth carrying vital spare parts, medical supplies, and new equipment failed during atmospheric entry. The ship burned up, scattering debris across the Martian surface. For hours, the colony's comms were silent. Then came the reality. No replacement parts, no new supplies, no margin for error. They would have to endure a full year before another resupply window. The settlers convened in the central hub. Every option was discussed, every resource tallied. They inventoried every nut, bolt, and circuit board. If something broke, they would salvage, repurpose, and rebuild. It was a year of improvisation. Engineers converted a greenhouse air pump into a habitat backup fan. A broken rover battery was stripped and rebuilt into portable power packs. Clothing was repaired by hand. Tools were reforged from scrap metal. But the true turning point came in the middle of that year, when the colony completed its first entirely self-sufficient project. a water extractor powered solely by the settlement's solar and nuclear grid, pulling moisture from the Martian atmosphere and subsurface ice. It produced enough water not only to meet needs, but to store reserves. That achievement changed everything. Astra 1 was no longer dependent on every Earth shipment for survival. For the first time, they had margin breathing room on a planet that offered none. When the next supply mission finally arrived, the settlers welcomed it gratefully. But they knew something had changed. They were no longer just surviving on Mars, they were beginning to live there. Looking forward. Today, Astra 1 stands as a symbol of what humanity can achieve when we refuse to accept our limits. Beyond the domes, construction has already begun on Astra 2, a second settlement located near a deposit of subsurface ice. The settlers are training new arrivals, passing on hard-earned lessons. Mars is slowly becoming a world with more than one address. Terraforming remains a distant dream, but steps have begun. Small atmospheric processors test methods for thickening the air, while experiments in regolith chemistry explore how to remove toxins from the soil. In the skies above, satellites map resources and relay data for the next phase of expansion. The children who will one day be born on Mars will never know Earth's oceans or forests. Their world will be smaller, harsher, but it will be theirs. And from their perspective, Earth will be the distant planet. History will remember Astra 1 not just for being first, but for proving that humanity is not bound to one world. We are explorers, builders, survivors. And when future generations walk under alien skies, they will know that it began here in a small cluster of domes, on a cold and silent planet, where a handful of people dared to call Mars home.